Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to bring the King George County Board of Supervisors budget work session to order tonight. So the first thing that we have on the schedule today is invocation. Mr. Collins, would you like to lead us off on that?
Dear Lord, thank you for this time we have together spent working on the county's finances for our people of King George. Please bring us grace and dignity for all the people who work together for the best. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Thank you, Mr. Collins and everyone. I'm going to open it up for public comment. Is anyone here this evening for public comment? Seeing none. Mr. Dines, anyone online? Okay. Anybody have any correspondence? Okay. Well, we will close public comment and move on to outside agency presentations. So first one up is Fredericksburg Regional Food Bank. Mr. Mayor.
And if you'd like to come, right.
Okay. Well, thank you all for your time and attention, your invitation to be with you. I look forward to the time spent this evening and hope to be able to frame our budget request as well as answer questions that you might have. Just a little bit of context. I'm relatively new at the food bank. I arrived there last January 2021 and have recognized that we need to be able to promote and market a little better in the community, probably the role that we have fulfilled traditionally. We're in our 40th year, and I know there's a good reputation enjoyed in the community and well known in the community, but perhaps not a full understanding of the growth and the need for increased services that the pandemic has brought on. And I wanted to be able to kind of frame this presentation in that light, if I may. And in terms of the particular impact in King George, I mean, you can see our map there within the handout on that first internal panel. You know, you're one of 4 counties that we serve. We serve a sliver of Orange County, the Locust Grove community, and then the city of Fredericksburg. So in the overall population, about 350,000 residents are within our territory of service, and we're the Feeding America Food Bank charged with serving that territory. We're one of 200 food banks from around the country, and Feeding America grants to its network food banks a certain geographic territory that we're responsible for covering. And as you also see there within the handout, the diversity of services is oriented towards obviously families, children, seniors, but in terms of the way we fulfill that, that right-hand panel on the internal handout there is what's most critical for me to highlight to you this evening, I think. The traditional form of service is not necessarily direct distribution services of the food bank, although we do engage in that. But we work with partner pantries in the communities where we're charged with serving. And in King George, there are 6 primary locations that we use as our partner service agencies. One is the King George Church of God. Another is St. Anthony Church, Love Thy Neighbor, Little Ark Baptist. And then we come into the community for 2 standing monthly distributions called our Mobile Pantry Program. One of those is at the Department of Social Services, and the other is at Dahlgren Harbor Mobile Home Park. Okay? And then once a month, we also come in on a rotating basis with what we call a drive-through or pop-up distribution site. Currently, we've been using Sidell Brooks Jr. Park as the primary location for that. But the nature of us calling it pop-up is as needs may present themselves, we would rotate that around to try to make it more convenient to those communities where there's a call for special service. So through those various distribution points in the last year, I wanted to highlight to you that we provided service within the community that equated to 180 meals per person in need. Now, the way per person in need is calculated by Feeding America is they canvass the community, look at the geography, look at the demographics of that community, the unemployment rate, the poverty rate, things of that nature that allow estimates to be made of what is the population that is food insecure. And food insecurity is defined as lacking the ability to self-provide enough nutrition for an active, healthy lifestyle. I mean, in many respects, it's not being able to provide 3 square meals a day, but sometimes it is cyclical, seasonal. It's not always chronic or perpetual. So food insecurity describes the fact of uncertainty as to whether or not you'll be able to self-provide a little better than just saying somebody is hungry and can't provide 3 square meals a day. So the food insecurity rate for King George County is actually, of the territories we serve, the second best. But still, within the county, there's 6.9% of the population that is deemed food insecure by the statistics that Feeding America number crunches. That's about 1,800 people within the county that do not have that wherewithal to provide for themselves the active, healthy lifestyle. So of that 1,800, the data based on our distribution of food is that we provided enough food for 180 meals in the course of the year for each of those 1,800 people. Okay. Now, obviously, we're not out there counting, did they get their 180 meals? But the data based on, the volume of food offered into the county, distributed within the county, equates to 180 meals per person in need. So essentially, provided 2 months worth of food, for the population that is food insecure. So in our budget request, to help us with our mobile pantries, to help us with our pop-up distribution, to help us with the 4 partner community pantries that we work with here, we're essentially asking maximally the investment that we're asking, which is rather nominal, but maximally what we're asking of you this year is enough to provide 1 week's worth of food for half of that food insecure population. And that generated the $9,500 essentially request that we put in to the budget proposal for you. So when you think of us being in a position through all of our partnerships to provide 2 months worth of food for all the food insecure, asking the county's investment to be 1 week for half of those people, we feel that that's a very fair request of the county to invest at that level and show the county's leadership's recognition of food insecurity within the community. And then also, those 6.9% is the overall rate of food insecurity. We'd certainly highlight that some of our programming takes place in school or summer feeding settings for children-focused settings. So that food insecurity rate in the county is almost 9%, 8.9% in terms of childhood food insecurity. So, certainly recognizing that often those children are helped by helping their families, but also can sometimes be independently helped by things like a summer feeding program or after-school meal program, something like that. It's also an investment in the health of your children, which 1 in 11 are in need of those services. And then lastly, the senior population. We have a dedicated senior box program under a federal program that provides the food, and we assemble it, distribute it through our services or through volunteers. That serves 80 seniors on a monthly basis in your county as well. So it's a way through this appeal, the $9,500 we're requesting would impact all those dimensions to support us in our mobile pantries, the standard permanent pantries, with Love Thy Neighbor being the strongest, most prominent one within the county, our own direct distributions, our senior feeding, our children's feeding, all that is rolled into the request that we're making. So I hope that's been helpful and maybe instructive, and I'd be glad to answer questions that may generate.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Anybody have questions?
Thank you.
Can I just make a comment?
Absolutely, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to thank you for coming out.
Sure.
I personally asked that you be put on the list to make
Thank
the
you.
request
Thank you.
because I started noticing that you were coming pretty frequently to
Mhm.
King George during the course of the pandemic, and so I share your Facebook posts when you do advertise ahead of time. So thanks for all you've done for our
Sure.
community.
I really appreciate that. And certainly the investment is maybe pandemic related in some respect, but by me being new at the food bank and the strategy and the vision I want to bring to the food bank, it won't be totally pandemic circumscribed. It'll be a continued focus on the county. We just owe it to our community to be invested in that way. And I think what has happened is the pandemic has helped elevate in the public eye nationally and regionally what a food bank can do. And so thankfully, some of the individual funding streams, while maybe not as high as they were in the initial thrust of the pandemic, have remained elevated compared to the pre-pandemic levels. So I think that rise in visibility will allow us to continue to grow our services going forward. And then, to kind of demonstrate that, we're investing in leasing a second facility going forward, at least for the next 5 years, because we know some of the government programs have pledged funding and support at least for the next 2 or 3 years. So that additional food that will be flowing into the community, we need to have the infrastructure to be able to handle it and distribute it. And so we've made that investment, recognizing that that will be an issue, at least for the next few years, that we have to manage for the sake of the community.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, may I ask a follow-up question of staff related to what was just stated? So as an outside agency, is this something that for this year we could, if we wished to entertain it, use ARPA funding for?
That would be correct, yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And Mr. Mayor, you said that what's your relationship again with Love Thy Neighbor? I mean, I know you work obviously with them.
Right.
Do you share donations and
Yeah,
stuff like
they're one of our 4 partner pantries. So we solicit on behalf of the whole community food, and we receive the food through federal government contracts that these sites would not be able to access without the food bank. And then they enjoy a membership with the food bank, almost like a Sam's Club, Costco type membership that now allows them, through their partnership with us, to be recipients of the food we receive. And so we are the broker of that food product for the entire community, the entire Plan District 16, and we're responsible for getting it out. So we engage in these membership agreements that you will be a site that will take food from us and get it out. And they operate somewhat independently in that regard. They set their hours, they set the volume of capacity they want to handle, that sort of thing. We simply fulfill requests for food that they make and help them get that food. And then, we piggyback on that with some direct distribution, the mobile pantries I spoke of, when we don't have enough agencies to get food out.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Citizens, any questions?
Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Would it be appropriate to wait while other presentations, or wish me to go ahead and leave at this stage?
You can do whatever. I mean, you can hang out and listen to the rest of the meeting, or you can leave and we'll
right.
be in touch with you.
All right. Well, thank you. I may
Thank
linger
you.
for a little bit, but thank you.
Thanks.
I appreciate that.
They were looking for the Red Cross. I saw you looking around. And what I didn't do the other day because I was late, if you guys could introduce yourselves, and I know Mr. Collins is new for this year. He probably knows who you all are, but since I was late the first meeting, I didn't get a chance to do that, and I forgot to do it today. So if y'all can introduce yourselves again. I think that's all the new faces that we have. Okay. Moving on from there, expenditures and summaries review, Mrs. Gunnell.
Good evening, honorable board members. So I'm going to go over, I guess, one, yeah, okay. The registrar's budget and the electoral budget change every year depending upon what kind of elections we're having. So what I did is on these slides, let me get to the next slide. On these slides, I just highlighted the changes, be it decrease or increase in what our budget's going to be. So for the registrar's budget, for the salaries and overtime, in 2021 and 2022 budget, I had put $1,200 in there. And then when I talked to Colleen after the last elections, we realized that that really wasn't enough money in there for overtime. So I increased it to 2,500 for this budget cycle. And a lot of that is due to the fact that my deputy works the elections for one thing, and then we also work Saturdays and Sundays during election time. So I just wanted to make sure that we wouldn't go over the budget this time. So I increased it to 2,500. And the line item of 1,300, which was the salary and wages, in 2021 and 2022, I had budgeted for 2 assistant registrars at 29,000. Knowing that right now, again, fluctuating, I decreased that down to 18,600 with just having 1 assistant registrar in there. So 1 assistant registrar, deputy registrar, and myself. Because right now we're just not as busy as we need to be. So, you know, I'm trying to be frugal with the county's money. 3,600 advertising. The budget was 812 and 2021 and 2022. I decreased that because I only need to send out 2 advertisements for this year instead of 3. So again, as you see, the budget fluctuates for whatever kind of elections we're having. Postal services. Postal services in 2021 and 2022, it was 7612, and I had put in there 6112, but at the request of myself, I would like to see if we could get that back up to 7612. And the reason being is because number one, postage is going up. Number two, we are having to now put postage on every single absentee ballot application that goes out for them to return it back to us. Now, there is a line item in the appropriations that we will get that back, a percentage of it. But as it stands right now, I have almost 700 and some ballots that need to go out for these next 2 elections, and I have to put postage on the return. So if we can increase that, that would help a lot. So telecommunications, that just went up slightly. It was 2868 and it went up to 2880. Phone and things like that, they just kind of stay the same on the line items unless Donna or Levita tell me that there's been an increase in there. Travel, I did increase that, and I increased that for a number of reasons. For the last couple of years, because of the pandemic, we haven't been able to get out to do conferences. My certification is going to be due the end of this year, and I would like to get my deputy up to the certifications that I have, just to get her to the level as to where I am. Office supplies, that increased from 2021 to 2022 to 3,000 to 6449. And for those of you that know me, know that I research everything, and the reason it's 6449 is because that's the exact number of what I need. I need a new filing cabinet that is an alpha drawer filing cabinet, and that's $1,749. If you come into my office, one of the drawers in my office and this is what holds every single one of our voting cards. So I actually need two, but I'll be okay with one for right now. I also have requested that and I think, if I'm not mistaken, in the last budget work meeting, was it approved for the remodel of my office? So I had requested, thank you very much. I had requested that we put 2 desks in the area that we're going to be making into a regular office. So that's in there as well. And then just basic office supplies, paper, things like that. So let me just make sure that I didn't miss anything on that one, because I have my little notes here. Yeah. So I increased it to include the new filing cabinet and then the general office supplies, paper envelope. One of the laws that came out again is that we are requested to print poll books for every single election. And so, as that is very costly, because you're talking about 352 pages, and that's double-sided just for one precinct, and that's for every election that we do. So, so I increased that. That's my budget for the general registrar's office. Any questions on that?
Questions, anyone? Mr. Collins?
Yes, Madam Chair. How many employees other than you are in the office?
Jency, myself, and then I have a part-time Vicky.
So you have yourself, another full-time,
Jency's full-time, and then Vicky's part-time.
and does anyone make under $32,000 a year in that office?
Vicky does,
That's the part-time?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and Vicky is very part-time. I mean, Vicky is as needed during elections, so she comes in, like if I'm going to be gone or if Jency's going to be gone, she'll start coming in when we start doing absentee. And, if we find that we're really busy, she'll come in.
I just asked that question. So in the county review of salaries and so forth, even though there's going to be a study, I don't want anyone making under the poverty level in King George County.
Right, and I appreciate that. When I first started, my office was strictly all part-time, and so that's what we kept it. I had 3 part-time and myself, and then when we were able to get a full-time, then I cut my part-time down, and I had 2 part-time. And then when my seasoned employees left, I cut that down to just having 1 part-time in Jency. So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Anyone else? Citizens? Nope.
So the next budget that we have is going to be the electoral board's budget, because I take care of that as well. So on 1301, that's salary and wages, and that's temporary. Whoops, sorry. So that's my temporary employees, and that's the officers of election. And again, that's based on how many elections we're having. So for this upcoming budget season, I'll have the November election and then a June primary. So November of 2022 and then June of 2023. Last year, we had budgeted thinking that we were going to be having an August primary because of the redistricting, but that didn't happen because the redistricting didn't happen. So that's why the increase was so high in 2021, 2022 because I had budgeted for 3 elections. For this one, I need to only budget for 2. So it fluctuates as well. 1,700 is the board compensation. That's my electoral board's pay, and that did increase. We're looking at hoping that the governor will give them a little bit of an increase in pay, so I went ahead and put that in there. Professional services, this one is 3160. And let me just get I'll tell you what this is. 3160 is actually the programming of the election. And so this is based on, from year to year, it's going to depend upon what kind of election. For example, the programming cost is going to be higher because we're going to have 10 different offices on the ballot. So it goes from 1 to 5, and then 5 to 12, and then 12 up is what the programming is. For 2022, we're really only going to have 2 races on the ballot. We'll have the congressional and possibly a special election with the school board for James Madison, and maybe a House of Delegate race. So we're still within that. It costs $1,500 just to program for that kind. It also includes my license and software agreement, and that goes up 4% every year. And so that's why the increase for 2 elections and then the software agreement. Okay. And then the next one is the maintenance contracts. And that goes up every year just because Hart increases it every year. And that's the maintenance contract on all of my machines. So it went up, it was $2,525, and now it's $3,400. And so it'll increase a little bit every year. Okay. Printing and binding, that's the big one. So printing and binding is anything that I get printed from, and SB3 basically has stated that we have to report the central absentee precinct by precinct. Before, when we reported it, it all was under just the central absentee. It was all under CAP. So what they're saying now is they're wanting it, the end of the election is, for example, they want to know how many voters voted in James Monroe the end of the night. They want to know how many voted in James Madison. We keep track of that in our office, but it's not tallied on the actual machine, and that's how they want it. So what happens there is that I have to now have a ballot specific for every single precinct. So for this 2022 election, because it is a congressional race, I averaged at about 60% turnout. And I did how many voters we had times 60%, and then that gave me about 13,500 ballots that I would need. And then I'd have to break them down. See, before in a presidential election, I could order just one whole group of ballots and I can intertwine them, interchange them. So if Monroe ran low, I could take some from Paspatancy or vice versa. Now they're all going to have to be precinct specific, and that increases the cost of them sending the ballots basically to us. Not only that, we're going to have to package them separately when they come out that evening. So not only are we going to have to open up and make sure that they're ran through, we're going to have to make sure that Monroe's has its own box, Shiloh has its own box. So it's a little more detail that they want, and they want it done by absentee mail and in person. So that's the increase in that. The other increase is that a bill passed where there's not going to be a witness signature on envelopes anymore for absentee, but they're going to use your last 4 digits of your social or maybe your driver's license. that means that I'm going to have to buy new envelopes for absentees that are going to go out. So it's like I said, it's like this all the time, and unfortunately, my budget is done before the General Assembly makes their changes in what we have to do. So um, office supplies, basically, I just increased that just a little bit again for paper and supplies that we may need. And then the other operating supplies, that $1,500 is for a unibinder. So I was given a unibinder from finance department many years ago, and I have used that thing, and that is to bind my poll books so I can send them to the precinct because I can't just send loose paper, and it's too expensive to go and have them, with the whatever the wires are. So finance was gracious enough; they didn't need theirs. They gave me theirs. It had two lights that worked. Now I'm down to one light that works, and so I've been trying to find somebody to fix it, but I can't. So it's $1,500 for a unibinder to be able to bind the poll books. So, and then everything else in my budget basically stays the same. But like I said, for both the general registrar and the electoral budget, it really depends on what kind of elections we're having, what kind of year it's going to be, what the General Assembly is, dictating to us what we need to have. So last year, for example, we thought we had enough money in our budget for mailings, for the postage. We found out now that we have to mail a voter card to every single voter in the county, and that's 20,000 voters that I'm going to have to send a card to. And if that has to be done before March 21st. If we don't get our AG opinion back, that means that I'm going to have to be sending cards out to the redistricting that just the county has done. So, but I think we'll be okay in my budget. I looked, and I think I have some wiggle room either in the GR budget or the EB budget. So I think we'll be okay there. But with that being said, my office could use some help stuffing some envelopes um, to help get these 20,000 voter cards out because my part time sprained her wrist, which means that she won't be coming in. so, so that's my budget for both mine and the electoral boards.
Well, thank you. Questions? Questions? Citizens' questions? Citizens, you know where her office is, right? For stuff in the envelopes. You can come.
So my office is in the Revercombe building, and we're right down the hallway from the treasurer's office. I'm not really sure when we're going to be stuffing them. I was told they have to go out by the 21st, but then today we got an email from our state saying stop all redistricting efforts because the system has crashed. So I'm not sure what's going on. So again, I may be doing it, at midnight. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Gump. Economic Development and Tourism, Mr. Minor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members of the board, for having me this evening. Do you need me to resend it? So, Mr. Chair, you guys have the board has the presentation in front of them. I can just go ahead and get started if it's okay. So the first slide, after the title slide, is the budget overview. So what I provided you guys is just a breakout of the last 4 fiscal years, and then the fourth one is the projected. So I guess I'm trying to give the board an idea of, because of the pandemic, what the economic development budget has looked like in the past, and then what it is that I'm projecting for in the future. So for the first fiscal year, the operating budget was around 23,000. This is the 1920. This is the first year I came on. 23,253. Obviously, we roll into COVID, and that becomes 8,854. Significant cuts rolling into that COVID year. Then FY 2021, 22, there was no travel or necessarily training in that budget until we were authorized to do so. So we're looking at 21,197. And then going into the 2022, 2023 budget, I'm looking at, and I'll just go ahead and go over to the next slide for you guys. I'm looking at adding a travel budget this year for conferences, as well as additional printing, some increase to dues and membership, and then some additional money for advertising and to potentially go after some grant money. So on the printing and binding line item, and these are the only changes I have to my budget this year. On the printing and binding line item, because of the potential to publish the tourism strategic plan, I'm looking at just increasing a little bit to have that printed, as well as look at having some ED marketing folders created so the department can take with them to these conferences and to meetings with prospecting businesses. So that's where that increase is coming from. On the advertising side, last year I did request money for advertising, and it was cut by the previous county administrator. This year, coming back requesting the same amount with just a little bit of an increase of $500. So $2,500 of that is earmarked for the Site Selectors Guild that the FRA brings to the county. We split that cost with 4 other localities, and then the $10,000 is actually going to be used to market some of these events and initiatives that we are holding within the county, whether that's through social media or have it printed materials. That's just a set aside. I also sort of look at that money, if possible, if we're eligible to go after Go Virginia money or to promote the agritech initiative that we're doing with Riot and to support the business development series, if there's any way I could use that money to do so, it's just sort of a set aside rather than coming back and asking the board for an additional $5,000 or $10,000 to pursue this effort. It's there in my budget, and I can just act on it. And then on the travel and conferences, VITA, the Virginia Economic Development Association, that's opened back up, and they're going back to in-person meetings. So this is just basically going to why the increase in the travel budget. So it's for VITA meetings as well as a Smart Ag event, defense event in DC, and then the Site Selectors Guild is actually in Richmond this year. On the dues and membership, the largest increase next to VITA would actually be to join the Northern Virginia Technology Council. So why the Northern Virginia Technology Council? They have basically all the companies that we are looking at or that we would like to expand in King George are in that council. So you're talking about, your top Fortune 100 companies, as well as small entrepreneurship companies that are in that DC metro area that are also looking to expand. And hopefully we can capture them, meet with them, and talk to them about potentially coming to King George County. So moving on to the next slide, as far as goals go, just sort of giving you guys an example of the marketing folders. What I don't want to do is show up to these meetings with these businesses with manila folders. I like to have something presentable and also have something that I could pass out to other departments if they're going into their own meetings. So it's not just an ED specific folder. We could order enough to where if somebody else wanted something more presentable, they could take with them, like the board, or if it's finance, it's something they could bring to a meeting as well. And then as far as the conference locations, the majority of all the VITA conferences are within the state. The Site Selectors Guild is in Richmond and Henrico. The Defense Tech Summit is in Washington, D.C. And then to support the Smart Ag Ag Tech initiative, the only event that I could find that sort of supports that initiative was in Las Vegas. So I wasn't just choosing that one just to choose it. It was the only event. And then just sort of going over the benefits of the Northern Virginia Technology Council. There are public members and regional members currently in this council. The Fredericksburg Regional Alliance is a part of it, Stafford, obviously Fairfax, Arlington, and all the Northern Virginia localities. And then just providing some of the same. Think of it as a tech council, like a Chamber of Commerce tech council, and what they add and what they offer to their members. This just gives me a chance, and the department and the county a chance to get in front of these major companies. So then moving on to the tourism budget summary. So what I provided you here in this first slide is just where we currently are in the fund balance. We currently have $644,727. Year to date, our annual revenue is $107,000. And what we typically see for total annual revenue for this fund is somewhere in the range of 130 to about $120,000 is what we'll see for annual revenue for the tax fund. So then moving on to that next slide. So, well, I guess let me stay on this one. So as we all know, the board has asked the Tourism Advisory Committee to put together a strategic plan. And in that effort, what I'm trying to do is present in this meeting a more balanced budget to help market the county rather than depending upon one-time pulse events. So we probably have 3 to 4 events every year. So those marketing dollars are only getting spent a month or maybe a month and a half up until that event. What I'm talking about is reallocating some of that funding to market the county 365 days out of the year. So then to the next slide, we look at the previous fiscal years. So I'm just giving you guys just a breakdown of how we've been spending the money. It's always been TAC applications and heavy funding of events. A good chunk of the budget also goes into landscaping because of the median, the Route 3 median. And then there's just a budget totals on that side. And so for year to date, 2021 and 2022, here's where we stand today. This does not account for. I don't think this slide accounts for the. I don't want to get this wrong. I don't think it accounts for anything that we've done, or maybe it does account for it. Hold on. Yeah, no, it doesn't account for the TAC applications that were approved in the previous fiscal year. So I didn't add them to this slide. So we're talking about the Fall Festival, and we're also talking about the Jazz in the Country as well. So I didn't add those to those because I believe we all agreed that those would come out of the fund balance. So then moving on to my proposed budget, the FY 2022 and 2023 spending. So basically what I'm trying to do is allocate $20,000 specifically to marketing the county moving forward for this fiscal year, keeping the bulk of that money in the TAC application and the TAP applications budget line, and then also allocating $23,000 for consulting services. We increased the travel and training budget just a little bit, but that's to attend the VA1 Summit, Tourism Summit, which is the only Virginia Tourism Summit or conference that we have in the state of Virginia. So moving on, I'm on slide 9 now. Sorry, I'm moving pretty fast. Apologize. So just to summarize what I'm looking at, I think I've already went over this. But that consulting firm, we'd like to look at hiring a consulting firm to help us with the social media messaging, content development, as well as the marketing and messaging of the department for tourism. And so for the proposed funds, this is what I'm looking to spend that $20,000 on in that first fiscal year. So continue the Google AdWords, which is billed monthly. That generates 40,000 impressions for us monthly for the Visit King George website. To get the Visit King George website to the top of that Google search, after speaking with our website manager, he told us it would be approximately $5,500 annually. This will be billed monthly. So we're looking at less than $600 a month to help with those search results when you put in Visit King George. The other part of this, and what will probably be a little bit of a different approach, is the Visit King George kiosks and brochure and magazine racks that we'd like to place into the hotels. So the people who are currently visiting the county that are in our hotels, we need to find a way to get this information in front of them. So after speaking with the hotels about the potential to do a kiosk, because the kiosk is not a new idea. This is something that I was gonna jointly do with Stafford and the city using ARPA funds, but they backed out. And then we looked at looking at Go Virginia funding, then they backed out. Well, for this year, I'm just not gonna wait on trying to do a regional project. And I know it would save us some money, but let's just see if might as well just go ahead and do it now and sort of bring the county up to date with it. So the Visit King George kiosk, what we looked at was putting them into about 6 hotels. Not every hotel wants a rack in it. A lot of well, at least 2 of the hotels that we spoke to are not interested in having racks due to COVID. So the only way to really supplement that is to look at kiosks. Kiosks can be expensive. They range, I think in the other slide I have on them, they range anywhere between $4,800 to about $900. Um, but then I'll just move on. We'll talk about that later. So $1,200 will be set aside for social media marketing. We'd like to do a Linktree deployment. Linktree is another just a social media data collector, and it disperses our visitors to our social media sites. Into, let's just say we put something on a brochure, like a QRC code, it will go straight to that Linktree link, and then you can go from there. You can choose whatever it is that you're looking at, and that collects data as to who's visiting the link, what they're clicking on, and what their interests are. And then the other $877 from that 1,200 will be utilized for just social media boosting, tourism specific. The other $1,300 will be used for brochure or marketing material development. So we all know that I'm working on the Native American trail signs. There's also other materials that are going to need to be printed. And then if we do go towards that magazine rack side, it's just enough money to essentially keep those filled within those hotels. So going on to slide 10. So just to sort of give you guys a breakdown of that $41,326 of TAC application set aside, $15,000 to $18,000 of that is earmarked for landscaping work. So Old Town Lawn cuts grass along that median, and it costs the county, well, it costs the TAC fund about $15,000 to $18,000 a year, and it all depends on what type of work needs to be done, or in what type of shape that those trees are in. And this is something that was agreed upon, I believe, in fiscal year 2018. That remaining $23,000 to $26,000 will all be used for TAC applications, right? So that's going to definitely limit what we can provide them as far as funding. However, it doesn't limit the number of events that we could have. It just means that they can't come to the counties and request the 20,000, 15,000 requests that we've seen in the past 2 fiscal years. So then I already went over the $1,200 that's for the VA1 Tourism Summit, and then for the kiosk under consideration. So I already told you guys we've already contacted the hotels. I've already told the board that we've already contacted the hotels in the county, and we gauged their interest. The kiosk costs between $900 and $4,800, depending on the software and the size of it. The ones that I'm looking at, or the ones that I would like to go at, are actually on the cheaper end. However, I haven't spoken to the vendors directly yet about what the cost is to set those up, how long they last, what the maintenance is on them. I'm still trying to figure all those things out. So once I have that information, I'll be able to make a decision on which kiosk we'd like to go with. The brochure racks are all dependent upon size, $200 to $800, depending on what you're looking at. Staff and I did basically an inventory of what brochures we have in the county, what organizations we could put on these racks if we were to deploy them throughout the county. And we came up with about 10 to 12, maybe 15 brochures that we could utilize or put on these racks, leaving space for about 4 to 5 additional ones to put on them. And then moving on to the next slide, just to sort of break down the kiosks and why we like to go this route. So to be effective in our marketing strategy, the county has to set a baseline of marketing metrics. This is something that we laid out in one of the objectives of the strategic plan. And so we have to collect primary data as well on our visitors. Again, brochures are important and we don't want to do away with them. They'll always have a place in tourism marketing, but the kiosks are just more effective, and it allows us, and I laid out some pros and cons for the board to review here this evening, but they're easier to maintain. I know the upfront costs are more expensive, but they save money in the long time. It's instant information. So if there's something new going on in the county and we update it on our website, it can be displayed right on that kiosk as well. To potentially buy tickets from these kiosks, again, they integrate with the website. And then the big thing is just data collection. Being able to figure out where our visitors are coming from, what they're doing, and what they're looking for when they come to the county helps us save money in the long run, because now we're putting our marketing right where it needs to be, and it's going to be even more effective. The cons of them, so they require internet and power connections. We don't think that'll be too big of an issue, but again, we haven't gotten to the point where we're ready to install them anywhere or had that deep of a conversation with the hotels. They do require software updates. They are expensive to replace, obviously, and then there are opportunities for mechanical failures, right? So then moving on to metrics and reporting. So to ensure that the department and the TAC is following the tourism strategic plan together, we will produce a tourism annual report that will publish data and statistics annually with status updates on tourism strategic plan objectives. So we all know that we have 10 objectives that we're working on. And so these are some of the metrics that the department has come up with that we will report annually to the community and as well to the board to ensure that we're keeping with the strategic plan. So we'll definitely track all these things here. These numbers here are provided by VTC annually. So the employment, the expenditures, the local tax receipts, labor and income. But additional metrics that we'll like to publish is, potential visitors to Caledon, new tourism business openings, hotel occupancy rates and revenue, website hits, TAC event registrants, and the number of events, as well as the geography of visitors. So these are some of the new metrics we are considering, and we may even just get even more specific as to as far as what we're measuring to make sure that we're hitting some of those key objectives that we laid out, like the outdoor recreational product development. We can't tell people what type of businesses they should open, but at least pushing that way will at least help us to sort of keep count of it. So with that being said, board, I'm here to answer any questions you may have for me this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Any questions?
Mr. Chair, I do have a question.
Go right ahead.
It's on the 23,000 for the consulting firm. I know we're looking at public information officer also. So is this just for tourism or is this for the whole county, all of the county?
I think this would just be for tourism, but I don't see why they wouldn't be able to assist if something like that came up. But I think there needs to be a clear line as to what we're going to hire them for, what we're going to utilize them for.
And specifically, what besides social media messaging and marketing is going to be more than that for the consulting firm? Like, what are you looking for from?
So what we have to put together an RFP, and what I would probably do is look at what previous localities have done of similar size to figure out how they've written it and how they want them to support them. But what I would ask for them to do from my departmental side of it is help us with content creation. So for instance, if we wanted to put together some graphics, some really cool graphics, we'd obviously have to, my department individually, we don't have the talent on our staff to do so. We'd have to hire a graphic designer. A good graphic designer is would cost us $75,000 a year easily. We'd have to hire a social media specialist or something to that effect. That would cost us easily $55,000. Instead, we could just push this out to a marketing consultant that can help us on a part-time basis, or they could help us when we're trying to push out different campaigns. So that's why we set a budget of about $23,000.
Okay, so it's usually utilizing a bigger company to use all their assets.
Exactly. Cheaper. We don't have the space. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why you go with a consultant, but cheaper and just professional, right? We know what we're getting out of them. We're going to get a professional product rather than having a bunch of amateurs on my staff try to take a whack at it. You hire somebody professional to do it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Granger?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Mr. Minor, thank you for coming out and presenting. The tourism budget summary, right now you're showing $107,613 for the annual revenues, and that's for 3/4 of the year, fiscal year. And I thought I heard you say on average it's between 120 to 130,000 of revenues yearly.
Correct.
So obviously a linear projection would say it's around 140,000. I know that's not a realistic way to look at the model.
Right.
Are these last 3 months usually a lower revenue amount? Or do we anticipate we're going to have a good year this year in regards to?
So we haven't dropped off at all, and that's a lot of that has to do with the bridge construction.
Okay.
And and obviously the base. So I can't project obviously what we're into. I'm just looking at previous numbers.
Okay.
Right now we're at 107. I would assume we probably have a good summer, but with gas prices going up, who knows?
Okay. Understood. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep.
Ms. Hahn indicated that that's actually a half year. That 107 is based on half year. Is that correct?
That's correct. The funds come into the county budget, and then Levita does a journal to transfer the funds, the 2% tax over to And I think she's only done up through the first 2 quarters of the year, because we're in the third quarter of the current fiscal year, so.
Skepta?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Minor, for coming out. I'm very glad to see that you've incorporated some feedback from the board with regard to the tourism strategic plan and the need for trying to come up with a budget for your ongoing tourism activities, because I'll speak for myself. I think the last thing that I want is for you to have to come to the board and your grant writer to have to write a grant application for your department to get money when your department is called the Department of Economic Development and Tourism.
Right.
If there are things that you know you're going to need, ongoing needs that you've identified, I like the fact that you're bringing us a budget ahead of time. If we choose to do so, we can approve it, and then you'll be able to just do what you need to do, and you don't have to come back to us all the time, every time you want to spend a dime from that fund. So good job on taking that feedback from the board.
Okay.
So you mentioned site development, and I wondered, and this is a question not yet for you, but if I could poll and see what consensus of the board would be, to have Mr. Minor at a future board meeting bring us a presentation on site selection. For those of us that don't know a lot about the process, there are a lot of layers to it. VEDP can help you get a certified site in your county, and right now we don't have any. I looked on the website the other day, and we don't have any certified sites for VDP. And I know last summer I participated in a number of the Go Virginia site development workshops and gave feedback to Go Virginia. And it looks like, depending on which version of the budget gets approved, they listen to the feedback from the localities, that we ask them, if the state wants site selection to be a priority, you need to give us money to bring up these sites. So would the board be okay with Mr. Minor coming back at a future meeting to explain the ins and outs of that to us? Yes? Okay, thank you.
No, it'd be my pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, and then, so the kiosks, have you researched, besides just it sounds like you're talking about buying them.
Okay.
Are there any places that would allow us to lease them, and kind of like our copier leases, and then you have like a maintenance contract, and that way we're not responsible for buying something that then, if it breaks, we don't have anything. In the course of, if you're going to continue to explore this, would that be something you could look at?
Absolutely, ma'am. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Then with regard to the question that Ms. Binder asked about the $23,320, so I realize that you may have a deficiency as far as somebody with the ability on staff to do that, but does anyone on your staff know how to use Canva?
Yes, we have a Canva Pro account.
You have a Canva Pro account?
Yeah, it's like I believe it's a shared account.
Okay.
Between the admin and our department.
So, I mean, if you have a pro account, there are all sorts of things. Your presentation folders that you're talking about doing, you could design those, brochures, social media posts. So, does your staff, do they all know how to use it? And because I would be happy to do a training for anybody who wants one. I've been using it for about 5 years. I learned from a course at Germanna Community College. I'm happy to do that. I'm just kind of hesitant as far as the $23,000 goes.
If I can just clarify that, so I think that Nick and I may have got our wires crossed on this, because he wasn't, of course, at the last budget session. You all talked about you want to see that as part of your salary survey, and so I don't, I understand that we need to maybe, the tourism and the economic development has a different social media need. But I think the whole purpose of looking at the entire county was to look at the entire county, not just to have selected departments. And so I think that's where he and I may have got our wires crossed on that. And so I don't know that you want, you want to leave it in as a placeholder, that's fine. But it's probably more appropriate that it get put into whatever you're going to do on the big picture. Make sure that there's enough revenue in that respect, or enough income to cover that. Because I think that, as Ms. Pinder has indicated, and as you, Ms. Kupka, has indicated, you want to see us kind of look at it on a bigger scale. And at the last meeting, you all directed us that way. So I would think we don't want to just segregate and just let him do his thing and then have another thing over here. I think it all needs to be one big look-see, if you will. That makes sense?
Thank you. And then I just had one other thing, and it just went out the window when you were speaking, Mr. Miller. So that's okay. That'll be it for me. Thanks, Mr. Meyer.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Collins?
Thank you, Mr. Minor, for coming this evening. So has it been considered or discussed for the kiosks where they would be self-pay, where, let's say, you wanted to put in a subcategory of food and McDonald's pays $30 a month to have it on there, or shopping, Walmart, restaurants, wineries, marinas, if anybody wants to go to those type of things. They would, have an advertising fee to be on the kiosk.
Yeah, so we can. So I don't know if that has that type of capability, but I like the way you're thinking about it. To potentially have sponsors or have people who want to display things. I mean, definitely, if there are people who apply for TAC applications and they have an event coming up, sir, that could be a way that we promote them through the kiosk. Like, this is what's going on today. The way I envisioned it is almost like an extension of the Visit King George website, because we have the information on the site, right? What events are coming up, what they're a part of, what they cost. But if we put them in the hotel, hotels on that kiosk, then we're right in front of our visitors, the people that are actually paying that hotel and occupancy tax. So that's the general concept of it. Putting that information right in front of them, and then when they go there, we know what it is that they're looking for. We can gather that information from the website as well, but this is just right there right there in the hotels with them, so they don't have to go out and search on their phone. If they're coming in, the way I see it is just like it's just like having a brochure rack. It's just digital.
Yes. So question 2 goes back to question 1, where it pays for itself. So if I'm in a hotel and I come downstairs, or I'm downstairs and I hit the kiosk and I want to go get something to eat, I can look under food and entertainment,
Right.
and then, but there'll be a subsidy from these folks that are putting it in there. I'm not speaking about the event type processes, but
On the food
reoccurring.
side, yeah, sorry, I mean to interrupt you. Yeah, on the food side, I just don't know how the interface would work yet. We haven't seen the software that they utilize on them. They've only told us that there's 2 versions you could choose, OS or Apple, right? So we got to figure out how they're laid out first, and that software is going to be associated with it. So I can't answer that question as accurately as I would like for you this evening.
Perhaps when we bring it back to you and we have our plan, then that's the question we have to go forward. I think that's a good point, because I think that is that is a situation. I would be interested. I would as well. Is that a package that you buy, and it has already prepaid type situations, whether it's vendors like you're saying, McDonald's or whoever, or Wendy's. No, it's on. They've already paid to be a part of this advertisement that we're doing for them. I think that's a good point too. We can look into that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for indulging me. I recalled what it was, and I just wanted to commend you for putting the travel and training back in there for the VA1 Tourism Conference. I attended that in 2018, and it was definitely valuable training for anyone working in the tourism industry. So thank you.
Thank you.
So the current tax run rate is what you said is the 644,727. That's what we got going on now.
Yep, that is correct, sir.
Okay.
Yes, that's the fund balance. Yes.
Okay. I'm just going through these brochure racks and stuff at at the hotels. We have 10 to 12 now. It says.
What 10 to 12 brochures or magazines that we could place on these racks right now.
Okay.
Right. So we would order a rack approximate to the size that of the materials that we have, and probably leave a little bit space for any expanding brochures that we'd like to put on there or rotate out.
And did you say we have some racks out now at a couple of hotels?
The only rack that I'm aware of, there's two places that I know, none that the county own, except for what's in the community center right now. So I don't think the county has ever purchased magazines or brochure racks that I'm aware of.
And the kiosks are kind of interesting, but if you could find out more about that, I mean, I have lots of questions on those, but you know, if you found out more about that and brought it to us later on, you know, about who takes care of them and you know who gets all the information in there. You said it gets linked to our website.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So I can tell you what we talked about from the regional. The reason why we try to do a regional application is because, or a regional Go Virginia application for it, or ARPA funding application for it, because when people come to visit, whether it's Fredericksburg, Stafford, or King George, they might be looking for something at night, but that's probably not in the locality. So it makes it so locality specific that whoever that visitor is, they may end up going regional, but they don't necessarily care. They're just visiting the Fredericksburg region or the Northern Neck region. So just having a list of regional assets helps the visitor from a regional standpoint rather than just making it so King George or so Stafford or so Fredericksburg specific. So it made sense, the big picture, but waiting for everybody, for three localities to agree on one grant application, it would just take years.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you. And nobody else?
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, while Chris is getting things pulled back up, I did hear from Mr. Moore from the Red Cross, and it was a little bit of a communications issue because he was going on the email that I had sent to the person who is no longer with the agency, and so he went to the county office building instead of here. And I believe when we talked on the phone, I told him it had been moved here because we had invited her to the first meeting. And so I believe he's, because he hadn't responded back to me again, so I believe he had already gone back home. Yeah, we're getting on 95 now. He just emailed me again. So he wanted to know if we wanted him to come back to the next meeting or if you just wanted to look over his presentation and see if you had any questions for him. And, you know, he does extend his apologies for getting everything crossed. Mine's one too. Well, he's driving. He's getting on 95. Yeah, going back to Richmond.
So, Mr. Chairman, may I? I believe I was the one who requested that he present, and if it pleases the board, if the board is okay with just reviewing the materials he's provided, I don't know that we need to have him try to come a third time. So I'm okay with that if it's okay with everyone else. Thank you.
And then if y'all have any questions, y'all can submit them to me and I'll get them to him and report back. Okay, and so at the beginning of tonight's meeting, Ms. Cobb handed out the very preliminary budget summary. And so along with that, if you could go ahead to the first slide for the challenges. So what this is a little different than you've seen in the past. Rather than wait until positions are approved and everything that's been requested is in the budget. So you could get an overall look at if we approved everything, that is what is in there. So, of course, public safety, we had staff increases and step plan that was implemented in fiscal year 22. For the sheriff, the salary increase for the next fiscal year will be $327,237, and for E911, $275,992. And EMS, their salary increases is $1,273,623. Rappahannock Regional Jail and the Juvenile Center combined, they are a total operating increase of $161,427, and their debt service of $226,405. And the debt service is only for the jail. The Juvenile Center doesn't have any debt at this time that isn't rolled into their operating budget. The operations of the Convenience Center and landfill. This has a total increase of $259,877. And I know that you all have brought up at some of your previous meetings that the landfill was or the convenience centers were supposed to be self-supporting. That original agreement that was done did not incorporate any room for growth as to the number of staff that it takes to run those centers, as well as the maintenance and additional items that they need to take care of at the convenience centers, the brush that has to be ground up, and the waste management was handling that. Now it is a responsibility of the county. I was informed just this week that the brush is piling up from all of the storm cleanup, and we're probably going to have to grind again in April. This year we're combining those two together, but we're keeping, on the advice of our auditors, we've set up a separate line item for just the salaries for the convenience centers, so that is what possibly that we can get waste management to negotiate on, is increase in salaries and a CPI at some point. So just for that, and just to give you a picture of everything, the salaries alone for the convenience center is $400,632, which is $102,588 more than that original revenue of $298,044, and that has not increased since we took over the operations of the convenience centers. And I think, Mr. Granger, you were probably the one that was having some of those questions, so I wanted to make sure that that.
Yes, ma'am. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Parks and Rec, we have an increase to their budget of $416,539, and this is to bring the fields up to the satisfactory condition, so that I think Mr. Clark has mentioned, so that we can get outside organizations to come to the county to have tournaments in our locations, which would bring additional revenue to our restaurants and possibly our hotels as well. And all of the staff that takes care of the parks have previously been under general properties, and that has moved under Parks and Rec. And I've got some specific numbers if you have any questions about that. So I'll stop here and see if you have any questions.
Mr. Chair, I do have a question on the Parks and Rec. What is the change? Did that money move over for those salaries from the budget?
So the salaries themselves, for the general, moving the people from general properties over is $219,726.
And that just moves from general funds?
From general properties to Parks and Rec, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so that leaves a delta of 200,000. Is that saying then they're going to spend $200,000 on the maintenance of fields, like for supplies?
So I'll give you more of a breakdown if you'd like.
That'd be great.
Of course, along with those employees comes the apparel costs, steel-toed boots. That was at $4,000. A cell phone increase of $3,900 to bring those over, and then training costs and memberships together $1,600. Then they moved 4 vehicles from general properties over to them. So he included in his budget an additional 10,600 in vehicle repair, a vehicle insurance increase of 2,600. They do have two vehicle leases. One is a current lease for the Parks and Rec, and one is, for the folks that are coming over, and then he's also going to lease another vehicle for Parks and Rec admin, and that's a total of $14,273 per year, and then increase in fuel for $94.50. To do the Parks and Rec fields, $32,377, and he has that broken out by how many acres of grass seed that he needs for Bermuda, how many acres for fescue, how much fertilizer, playground wood fiber, stone dust, and gravel for the parking areas and park roads, all coming up to $32,377. And then he has other improvements such as mower parts, security gate for Barnesfield, general maintenance supplies, janitorial supplies for the parks, drainage repairs for Hunter Field, and we did double check to make sure. I think that is the one in it that is. We checked the schools to make sure that wasn't handled by them, and it's not. Erosion control for Brooks Park and drainage improvements for Barnesfield for a total of $46,200. And then he also would like to purchase a new mower and a sprayer spreader for $32,000 for the two. And he does want a new work order system, and that's part of the reason for the increased cell phone cost, to have a work order system for them, and that is $4,200.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a follow-up question just on the information that she just provided? Thank you very much. Question on the, what was it? You had the security gate, Hunter Field.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it the county pays for the maintenance on it? Because it is school board property. Is it because the Parks and Rec are the only ones that still use it?
Yes, I believe that was the reason behind that.
Was that an agreement that was done in the past, or is it a handshake agreement?
No, it actually is an agreement. It's in writing. They did it several years ago, whereas Parks and Rec, they're responsible for the field, and I think there's a hut or something out there they're responsible for. Yeah. So for the maintenance and everything for the pit.
Okay.
So,
I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
It is. It's an actual agreement.
Not on that particular item. I'll wait till the budget numbers for the increase of pay. Thank you.
Okay, so we would advance. So this is the amount that was on that slide that was presented to you all at the last budget work session. The total for the new positions that are being requested is $651,071. The budget numbers include up to a 5% increase with a combination of COLA and merit. This excludes public safety and DSS. Remaining staff a budget of $332,327, and that includes up to a 5% with also the increase in FICA, the increase in VRS based on those pay increases. And you said you had a question on that?
No, I have a discussion, Mr. Chair. So I'm not a fan of merit raises because merit is not necessarily based on merit, it's based on whether your supervisor likes you or not. So someone doing the same job can get 3% and the other person can get 2%. It's not a good system for raises. You either give everybody the same or you put it all in a COLA, whatever it is, but I think the merit-based system is not a good system. That's my discussion item for that particular one.
Uh, Ms. Collins, thank you for your point. I'll be honest, I would take a different stance. I like the merit system. Um, if you go more of the COLA, uh, all you're doing is encouraging people to just do enough. And not saying anyone on our staff does, but we have great staff, and I would like to compensate people if you go above and beyond that it is recognized and it is compensated at that rate. I'm a fan I'm in favor of merit raises. I think that's the way to go. Just my personal take on it.
May I, Mr. Chairman? So can staff advise when you're talking about a merit increase, is that based on a performance review,
Yes, ma'am.
right? And there are measurable standards in that performance review that the employee would get judged on. There's data and measurable outcomes. So I agree with Mr. Granger. I would like to see if we did anything, it'd be merit based. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good. One more shot at this. So inherently, the merit-based system is flawed. So you can do as much as you want, but if a supervisor can base what your performance is on their opinion of these criteria. I've been involved in some of this system, and it's bad for morale, especially when someone doing the exact same work, doing the exact same thing, have two different supervisors, and one gets a lower merit rating. It's bad for morale. Everybody needs to get the same. If you want to, you still will evaluate them, but I don't think it should be based upon that particular merit. It's flawed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Ms. On?
An increase for the non-mandated outside agencies is an increase of $247,584.
May I ask a question about that real quick? Thank you. Ms. Han, I'm assuming that is if we were to approve all the requests.
Now, this is for the for the non-mandated if
That-
we approved everything.
Just whatever
So
everyone
they're in
asked
there, but I believe that I supplied all of you all with all the outside agency
Yes, ma'am.
requests. And so, once you make
for.
decisions,
Yes, okay, just want to make sure.
because there was one agency that requested
150-ish?
174,000.
It was, hang on, it's right. Yeah, it was Micah
Mhm.
Ecumen, I can't. Thank you, Mr. Dines.
Yes, so that is correct. Everything is in there, and as you make decisions, then that number can change. Mr. Dines? For the mandated outside agencies, the increase is 23,970.
You probably want to talk about, you did get a notice from somebody that
Yes.
they wanted, go ahead.
So I just received a notice from the Office on Youth, which is one of our mandated agencies, and they are requesting some ARPA funds. And he just got this together. They are requesting, they want to purchase a van for $50,000 for transportation of the youth that they serve in our community service program to return to the number of youth served pre-pandemic while remaining within COVID CDC recommendations. And in technology, they want $11,300 to upgrade technology and purchase new hardware. So they've split it out by the percentage of the clients that are served by the different counties. And of that, 61,300, they are asking that, King George, and they actually split it, and they're also a therapist, in here too. But they've split it out for the, total request for King George County is $14,371.26.
And I had instructed Ms. Hahn that we would share that with you tonight, and then if you want to have these folks come and present, they could come at one of the next meetings. I mean, we could put them in. So we're not making any assumptions. We're just letting you know.
Who is this group?
This is the Office on Youth. And they serve City of Fredericksburg, King George County, Spotsylvania County, and Stafford County.
Who's our
And they,
representative?
Davy Farron, and 6% of their clients come from King George County, and so it's.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Go ahead.
So is this the group, like if a school student, because you're talking about young people, youth, is required to perform community service to return as a condition of return to school, or what is this? Because
So, Mr. Chair, if I can answer her question. So I was on that board for 8 years, and what they're mostly do are from court mandated youth offenders. Mhm.
But there's no one from this board that serves as a liaison to it. It's a school.
No, it's usually a community member that shows interest. I don't know who it is right now.
Do we have anything on that? Do we have anybody that is a committee member or board member that? Okay.
And I did speak to him this afternoon, and he would be willing to come to like the next meeting if we wanted him to, and kind of answer some of your questions.
Mr. Chair, I know I would like to hear because I'd like to learn more about it.
And then VRS and Mr. Granger also asked about this last week. So based on the salaries that were in the budget last year at the 9.52% and the salaries that are in there currently after the last increases for everyone was to the 12.2%, it's an increase of $572,167. And then, so, and this is very preliminary, and preface this by saying that last Friday I sent out an email to all the members of the school board and all the members of the Board of Supervisors. Dr. Benson presented his preliminary budget to the school board on February 14th, which shows a total increase in their budget of $8,264,201. The state projected revenue increase is $3,930,246, and county total request is now $22,333,954, which is an increase of $4,333,954. And so those numbers, that was in the governor's introduced budget back in December. Of course, that was Governor Northam. And so now that the General Assembly has been in session, both the House and the Senate come up with their own version of that bill. And there's quite a bit of difference between the two. The Senate budget includes $2.4 million for school construction, which can be used for new construction or for payment of debt. The House budget does not. They want to see that on a grant type reimbursable line of funding. They also is a difference in what the House and Senate feel that should be a suitable pay increase for teachers. So they're differing on that. As you know, the General Assembly is slated to end on the 12th, which is the Saturday. And so Dr. Benson would like to have the extra time, and that's why, because he has to present his final version to his board, and he didn't have enough time to present next Monday, I think it was, or not, no, it was this week. It was this Monday. So he wanted to have the extra time to present to them on the 28th and then come to us on the 30th with a more accurate, based on final decisions at the General Assembly. So what I'm going to show you here is just some of what it was in his preliminary budget that he presented on February 14th. There is a change in the composite index, which is the county's ability to pay, from 37.03 to 38.05 for the state contribution. This results in state contribution for SOQ funded positions decreasing from 62.97 to 61.95%. He has increased the ADM from 4,380 to 4,405, which is an increase of 25 students. The county provided $18 million in the current fiscal year, and the required local effort per the governor's introduced budget is $15,336,224. So I just wanted to give you some information on the schools, but like I said, that is very preliminary, and we'll have more when Dr. Benson comes and presents to you all.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question on the school's budget? And Donna, I have a question for the change in the composite index. Is that based on the median income or census data?
It's census data, and it's the county's, it's a large formula that they use, and they come up with each county or locality's ability to pay based on probably the census and reassessments are figuring in. The county's growing, and we should be able to pay more.
Okay, so that's at the state government level that they make that
Yes,
assessment.
that's correct. The Department of Education.
And then my last one, let's see. You mentioned school construction. I got your email last week. I just a clarification on this because I'm still trying to wrap my head around that part. Is that saying that they expect each county to put in, or locality, a little kitty for school construction fund, or?
No, that, like I said, that can be used for any school construction that they need to right now, or it can be used to pay the debt for construction that has already taken place.
But each locality would have to put it aside. Is that's what I wasn't understanding?
And that's what's one of the things that's not clear yet, and that's why one of the reasons that they wanted to put it off, so that they can get more information on that.
It sounds like a good idea, but it also could be more taxes too.
Well,
so that's where
once upon a time, back many years ago, the state used to, and that was all state funded, would provide funds for school construction, and then they took it out.
So this might be.
The Governor Northam was trying to reintroduce it back to the schools funding from the state.
Okay, but there might be a local cost to it.
No.
Okay.
There was no local match to that.
Right. I was just saying there could be if the assembly still debates it or not. I misunderstood it then.
In both the governor's introduced budget and the Senate budget, which is where it is right now, there was no local match.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? So I guess at this time, we would like to ask for your guidance as how you would like for us to go forward with the expenditures the way that they're in here now, to prepare for the next, if y'all want to get down into some of the other, increases that are shown on here. What direction would you like for us to take? And I know that Amanda also asked me to ask you all, would it benefit you all if she had someone from NeoGov come and talk about the learning management system? See if we can get them to come.
The other thing that, excuse me, the other thing we talked about is that we want to, I guess, kind of put on your radar screen is the idea of like the 23rd, kind of diving into any revenue opportunities if we have that information. I know Mr. Collins has asked me, about that, and a lot of it, as Ms. Hahn indicated to me, is we're waiting on the state, and so it sounds like there'll be some clarity perhaps after the end of this weekend. But in terms of some of the things that you're going to need to start factoring into your budget decisions, we wanted to try to get that to you as soon as we could. So we thought next week, deeper dive into some of these expenditure challenges that we have, keeping in mind you have a big situation with the school board that you're going to have to deal with. And there are some kind of fixed things in your current budget with the salary changes that happen in public safety and in emergency services. So, those are things that are fixed. You really can't do much with those, but have that kind of deeper dive next week. Perhaps have this other group show up. If you have any questions about the Red Cross that you want to get to us that we can answer for you, and we can provide that at the next meeting, and then utilize that meeting on the 23rd to kind of do some more cleanup, but also spend some more time on the revenue, kind of clearing the way for the 30th, where you would have this discussion with the school board and their budget, and then going into April and however you want to go. So, is that something that you guys are good with? Okay. And we can maybe what I'll do is just have everybody that's got anything on the departments to be here. If you want to give us stuff in advance, we can. If you want to give us who you want to have maybe answer some more questions, that's fine, but maybe we'll just have all the department heads, if that's okay, unless there's some that you don't care about and you say you're good with. But we would probably have, because everybody's kind of touched on this. I mean, they're touched by this budget, so maybe it'd be good for that process to, if you have a question about parks, Mr. Clark could be here. If you have a question about new positions in the fire department, then Chief Moody could be here. So, I think that's what we were talking about.
So when would the next meeting be?
Be next Wednesday, the 16th.
That's spring break. A lot of people around.
Got a board meeting too. I would ask if we could push it to 6:30. At least for this next one, I do have some things going on next week. Trying to work with my work schedule. If the rest of the board is amenable, I appreciate it. Thank you. Okay. Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Shona. Would it be possible? I really like the line by line breakdown, kind of showing salaries and then where the expenditures are. Could I get a soft copy of each department's?
Of the summary sheet? Is
Yes.
that what you're looking for?
Yes.
For each department?
Yeah, I know we do.
Do you want it at the meeting, or do you want it
when you have it
emailed
ahead of time, as much to be able to look through and be prepared with questions. And if I have questions, I could email you and let you know, so those department heads, if they're available, could be there to either answer them publicly or
we'll just send it to everybody if that's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a big deal for us. It's probably easier to send it all to everybody.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
How about a motion?
I move to adjourn until Tuesday, March 15th at 6:30 p.m. in the boardroom.
Second.
We have a motion properly seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We are adjourned.